have enough money, what are we forced into? And so for me, it was how can I position myself to help people who just to have options. That's all that I want to give people with their money, is just options, so that when things are good, we have options about what we can do with our money, and when things are not so good, that we also have options and we're not perhaps forced into situations that could maybe hurt us long term. So I worked for another financial planner before I felt like I was forced to start my own financial planning company, just because of a difference in values. And it just happened really naturally that I ended up working with a lot of New Zealanders, Māori, Pacific Islanders, across, mainly in Queensland, but across Australia as well. So at the moment, we look after 170 families. And our name is Family First Financial Solutions, which really shows you where my focus is with my clients. So if you're one of my clients, I will know you, your husband, your children's names, their ages, your grandchildren. If they're important to you, then they're important to me. And with any financial advice, it's really looking at, I think the key is if you are from New Zealand, or if you just maybe are someone who maybe grew up in a household where money wasn't really talked about, it's like, how do we understand the system that we live in Australia, so that we're not caught out by it? And in the best sense, how can we do well in the system that we're under? I always use the example with my clients of my dad. When he was 19 in Auckland, he had a major motorbike accident, and he will receive money from the New Zealand government until he's 65, and not a small amount, a weekly amount. In Australia, my mum was hit on her motorbike, and she had to sue a woman to get any money, which took 4 years. So just the difference in systems mean that sometimes people can just need a bit of support to navigate those systems. Financial planning is sort of a beast by itself, where we look after, first thing is insurance if people need it. So what would happen if things took a dive financially, if I wasn't able to work, if I died? Insurance, superannuation, investments, Centrelink, banking, that's all part of the thing. So my job is to sort of put it all together into a nice little package for you, budgeting and money management, those sorts of things. And this is effectively what we've done for the last 5 years, starting out very basic and then expanding on our services. But what became a very big priority of mine in the last 18 months was actually helping people around not just giving them the solution, because a lot of time I'd give the solution and then 6 months later we mightn't have actually made much improvement. So it's actually around helping people with the mindset that we hold around money. If we didn't grow up with healthy financial discussions in our family, oftentimes that plays out in our adult life, where maybe we haven't made decisions around money that we're proud of. Maybe we've been forced into decisions around money. So I have a very strong passion around how can we make money a useful player in our team to support our family, rather than having this relationship where it's the bad guy, or it's done something to us, or everyone else has got the money and I don't. So all these things that sort of hold us back, that I think actually can prevent us from taking on the tools, all of us to some degree. So that's where I would really like to make more of a difference. It's not in just giving the tools, but in actually addressing maybe some of the blocks that stop us from having great money situations and great money stories, because financial planning is pretty much just formulas. It's heart as well. It's caring about people, but it's simply formulas, calculations, and those sorts of things. But if it was that easy, we would all be very well off. So yeah, that's just a bit about me. Oh, and I'm recently married and have a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, 6-year-old to 6-year-old. Yeah.
Wow. So I noticed that you've done a fair bit of work in the personal development side of things, which I think you touched on with the money values and bringing that into the practice that you have with financial planning. That's quite a unique set of skills, I think, from what I've seen.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, but I was 28 and I was really, I'd been in banking for 11 years, which as a 28-year-old is a long, long time. And I said to my best friend, what should I do? And she said, oh, you should be a life coach. And at first it seemed like a very flippant idea, but once I started actually getting into it, I very, very much enjoyed just learning how we work and helping to I guess, connect with people better and help bring out what's important to them, what their strengths are, and also in myself. So I try and use those sorts of principles about coaching is not about always just telling people what to do, because I don't really know anyone who likes being told what to do, but it's how do we create what's important to you, and how can I just give you a few steps to make sure that, or to assist you to get what it is that's important to you, rather than here's a model of what a great life looks like and what you should have, because it's really very few people that fit the model of I should have the house paid off and the investment properties and all that. I'm like, if those things don't support what really makes you happy, then it's a defunct model.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just not sustainable, hey?
Yeah, that's right. Because there is only so many resources that are available for anything. So I think COVID-19 has been a great reminder of that. Which we'll probably talk about a bit more. But.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. That's a good segue into it. But guys, we do have chat on down the bottom. So if you get questions or you think of something that comes up while Celeste is talking, whack it in there and we can circle back to it as well. So I do have some questions here. Some of the ones that I've been given, over the last few weeks. So I guess the questions are, with accessing the 2 lots of $10,000 from your super, how do you know whether you qualify or not?
They've been a bit clearer on the eligibility criteria now. So whenever I'm on my my company website, I only quote government legislation, so from treasury.gov.au, to make sure that it's clear. And I completely understand people's frustration with what's been shared, because it's been really unclear. We've rushed to give people an answer, but a lot of people haven't been clear on whether they are eligible. So it has been confirmed that as long as you're unemployed or have been made redundant or have had a reduction in your hours of at least 20%, that you will be able to access that if you're an employed person or were an employed person, and that you can register your intention to claim now, and they'll start actually processing applications from the 20th of April and making payments available through May. So once you actually go through MyGov and submit your intention, you'll get an approval letter, which is then given to your super company. Sorry, and then your super company can process the withdrawal for you. So it'll be your approval letter with your withdrawal form to your super company, and then money will flow into your bank.
Okay, so these access to super is, there's that argument. If you take money out of it now, it's going to, impact, say, by about another 80 grand later on down the track that you won't have recovered in your super. Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So when people say that we've lost money in our super, we haven't actually lost money. What happens is that when you have superannuation, you buy units into different managed funds. So it's just your unit has decreased in value, because generally what your money's invested into is companies via shares. And when the companies aren't trading, like they can't trade as profitably as they were now, the value of that company goes down, because they're not as profitable. They're not generating much money to go around the economy. So people still have the same amount of units. They still own, it's sort of like a house. If you purchased a house at, say, $500,000, you don't not own the house anymore when the property market drops. You still own the house, but the value of that house has dropped. So when we're talking to people about accessing their super, I 100% understand why people would do that. And if that's something that they work out through a plan, that's what I would encourage people to do, is to work perhaps with you or however it is, to get a plan as to what you need. Because what we're doing is, I have investment properties, when they drop in value, I don't care, because I don't need to access the money. So now though, if we're looking at accessing our super while the value of it has dropped, you're essentially making that loss, which has only been on paper up to this point because you haven't been able to access the money or needed to, you're making it real. So when you sell at that $350,000 price, if we're talking about the house, you're making that loss real, and then it's going to take a lot more time for you to try and build that super up. So I guess the key message for me is, if you need to access your super because you've exhausted everything else, you have to access it. It's money on your, it's food on your table and bills paid, but I would exhaust everything else before that, just for the simple fact of you're selling when your house is worth $350,000, so you're making that loss really real.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just in terms of that, even if you weren't accessing it, we're all really conscious that super has dropped in value. And I've seen some posts around suggestions to move the investment portfolio from where it is now into cash to minimise that loss. How does that sit with you?
It depends on your situation. So I have moved a few clients who have been closer to retirement. So with a client who's in their 30s and 40s, everything with investment is about time that you spend in the market. It's not about trying to time the market. So I'm not the sort of financial advisor that deals in actual trading of stocks and shares. I don't sit there and wait until McDonald's goes up and then I sell my McDonald's shares, and I wait until Westfield drops and then I buy more of those. I don't do that. It's the best strategy over the long term is actually just the time that you spend with your money invested, riding out those highs and lows, because the lows and the highs come, but over the long term, they're actually the highs, things are always rising in price. It's sort of like when my parents bought my first house and they paid $24,000 for it. And then 20 years later, they sold it for $110,000, and now it's worth like $400,000. Through that time, that the value of that house would have dropped. But it's time just spent in the market that's going to serve you better than trying to pick. So if my clients have been close to retirement age and I've explained to them the risks of moving that money into cash, that they understand that they're now selling their house at $350,000 just to keep with that nice, simple image. That's something that we do just to stem the loss, and it's only for those who are very close. But in saying that, Tanga, I also do what I call like a risk analysis. So I ask them a bunch of questions to actually take my own personal bias out of it and just go, hey, according to everything that we've checked off here, you've answered that you should actually not be all in cash. You should still be invested this way. If the client was still to say, no, I just want to have safety, I don't want to lose any more money, I don't know what's going to happen, we've moved the client into cash. So I understand that what's different about this compared to any other market crashes is how quickly it's come. Okay, so I was talking to clients in February, and I've never sold myself that I will give you the most amazing returns that are out there. I've certainly historically done better than the average. I've never sold on that though, because I literally am not the person controlling the market. When clients are calling me, they understand, or I've educated them so they understand I pick strong performing funds, but I don't control what's happened in China. I didn't start the virus. So there's only so much that we can do.
Yeah, great. That makes total sense. So one of the other questions, actually this is a personal one because my son is actually a tradie. He's an electrician, but he only contracts. So he has an ABN, and a lot of our tradies will have their own ABN, but they operate under one contract type thing. Yeah. So classified as an employee or not? How does that all work?
If he's completing his tax returns and with ABN income, he'd be classified as self-employed. So it's according to the tax office's ruling. To get his ABN, he would have had to have stated generally that he doesn't work for just one person. That can change over time. He would have had to have stated that he's open to working for different companies. Otherwise, he would have had to have been declined the ABN and been classed as an employee. So he'll be classified as a self-employed person. If under the JobKeeper, he should be able to look at claiming that as long as he can prove a 30% reduction in his turnover or his revenue from the business.
Okay. So that is the gross income. That's the amount that's coming in. Yeah. The supply. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And some businesses will be a bit different because of the timing of when they receive money. So personally, I see a client on day one. I don't really generally receive money until day 90 or day 120. So, yeah, so it's just something to be aware of, that businesses will be able to prove their loss of earnings over different periods. They just need a month to prove that it's dropped for a month period.
Right, okay. And how do they do that? Is that...
Does he operate like Xero or some sort of reconciliation system with a BAS agent or tax agent that he can, so that's what they use.
Right, okay, cool, that makes sense. We've just got a question here from Lynn. I've heard that changing stock shares for gold or silver is a safer move at this time for a 60-year-old with the future still really uncertain. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so commodities are interesting. I mean, they also do go up and down in value. I mean, oil's completely bottomed out over it, and that's also hurt the market. So it's safer, but I would look at, I still believe in having some diversification. So we've got shares and we've got property. Those are what we call growth assets. So they've got more risk than, say, government bonds, where you actually loan a bit of money to the government, and cash in the bank, which earns little money but has that safety around it. So I still believe in diversifying across the groups. But if you're at 60 years old, even no matter how I ask my clients the questions, I still take into account we're 60, we're going to be able to access that money in however many years, and to take a bit of discernment. So for a classic 60-year-old, I would look at having about 30% in property and shares, and the rest of the funds in those safer options. And commodities are actually woven into those options because they are traded. So they actually make up some of those shares. They do have, and just to complicate it a little bit more, but when we talk about shares, there's also different types of shares. It's like property. Property is not the same. Me owning my home is not the same as Westfield Mall down the road, or the commercial office building down there, or Dreamworld down the Gold Coast. Like, property is not just property. Shares are not just shares. So it's the same with silver and gold. They're like a safer type of share compared to new companies. You know, new companies have a high failure rate. So to put your money in those, some of those go absolute gangbusters and make great amounts of money, and a lot of them fail. So they're a higher risk share than, say, the banks, having money in the banks, which are quite consistently profitable, or having money in something like silver and shares. But if it was my client who's a 60-year-old, and forgive me for not being addressing you directly, it's just because I have to be careful. I could be sued because I haven't been technically engaged for advice. If it was a 6-year-old, within that share portfolio, silver and gold is fairly low risk within that asset category. You can probably even look at like super funds online and what their options are, like the age-based options, and it would probably show you what they'd put into shares and property, and and just generally the super funds set you up according to your age, so that they're actually moving you out of certain risk when you hit a certain age, which provides you some comfort. They're not just sort of a set and forget strategy. So to answer the question, gold and silver is a safer move within stocks and shares, but I wouldn't put all of my eggs in one basket at any stage.
That's great. I wasn't aware that super funds will shift strategies based on your age or the time of life that you're in.
Generally, they have what's called life stage strategies. So I'm more proactive with my management because that's what clients pay me for. But there are some good performing funds out there. And to the point where I've said to clients, look, I'd love to have you as a client. However, your super is actually doing well. They've invested it well for you. They've invested it according to what your risk appetite is. And, it's always, I have to work in the client's best interest, even if that means that I don't manage their superannuation, because some superannuations actually do it well, and they're very well regulated. So I don't have a lot to say about super funds. That's terrible. But where a client does come to me and I can show them that fees are lower, investment returns have historically been higher, and they just want someone in their corner, like a financial advisor, then I do look at taking them on as a client for sure.
Serena's got a good question here. Can your super company say no after you get the approval from ATO?
I've had a couple of super companies so prior to the temporary release of super, there have actually been a few super companies who the law is one thing, but the super fund policy is another thing. So if that happens where you get an approval from the ATO, that's an instruction that you are legally allowed to take money out of your super fund, but your super fund doesn't always have to honour that. Whether it's, a great example is KiwiSaver. So there's less than, I could count the super funds on one hand that will actually allow you to bring KiwiSaver from New Zealand to Australia, even though it's the law that you can bring it. Only about 4 or 5 super funds have actually opened themselves up to doing it, and the same would be the reverse with this situation. So it's the law that you can access it. Whether your super fund allows you to could be different, but all you need to do in that case is transfer your super to another super fund that allows you to do it, and check that they will allow the release of the super.
It's actually an interesting comment. When I was on the National Debt Helpline, that was a common thing that would come through with certain supers that were declining. So under hardship, if you'd had a Centrelink income for 26 weeks, you can apply for $10,000 taxed. So there was quite a bit coming out of that. But you're right, there were a handful of supers that wouldn't allow that even if you got that approval. And so people would then shift it to another super fund, which then takes time. And, it's just things that people have to factor in now, start thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. Get on the front foot with it with your super fund and check if they will release. And generally, as I'm calling super funds, they will have a pre-recorded message saying, we're not taking applications yet. So I've been on the phone to Australian Super, Sun Super, Rest, and Q Super, and they've all said, we're not taking applications yet, so don't even, so stop clogging up the phone line essentially, which indicates to me that they will allow it. They're not saying they won't do it yet. Yeah. If you're worried about it, just jump on the website first because the phone lines are busy, and then give them a call if you can't get a clear answer, or if you just want that peace of mind. I think we all like to hear from a human being that you're going to get what you need. And on that note of accessing super, one of the benefits of the temporary release is that it's not taxed, and that is a big advantage for a disciplined person. So even though I'm saying exhaust every avenue, it is an advantage that we're not paying tax on that withdrawal.
Fine. Just on that, now I'm assuming that you just do it the once, and most people are going to go for the 10,000, or are we going to try and educate them to work out how much they need? It's just so much uncertainty. Like, do I need the full 10,000? Should I, wait and just do little bits, or how should I attack this?
Yeah, I think that really there's so much unknown around how long the situation will last. And so I've asked my clients, and I've joked with them, if I see you driving a new car, like I'm going to be really upset with you. But I don't think they'll actually even try that, to be honest. But they know I'm on their team, right? And I know that, it's a very exciting prospect to be able to access this money. And so I'm on team sensible and for your future self here. But my thing is just always keep it to the basics. What do we actually need to survive the next 6 months? I think that's the hard thing for people, is we just don't know exactly how long it's going to be. So how much do we need to survive 6 months? If hubby's still working but mum's not anymore, what does that look like and what's our shortfall? And before we do that too, where can we pull out expenses that are additional to what we actually need? Foxtel's given me all the movie channels till the end of May, which I'm sort of grateful for. But there's also lots of things that is a great time to just reflect on, what have I been signing up to and giving my money away to that's really not serving me and my family.
Perfect.
And then take that amount and times it by however many weeks until we get to maybe the end of July, because the next round will open up around that time, and you'll be able to access the next portion if you do need to access it again. But just remember, you're buying, you're taking, you're selling the house at $350,000. So just be really careful, because this is your money, this is your retirement money, and as we go along, the government does want us to move to more self-retirement. So we don't want to not rob our future selves, you know what I mean? Like we just I want you to be as comfortable as possible when you just can't work anymore, or maybe you can work, but no one's hiring anymore because the job markets are quite tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like the whole landscape's going to look totally different. It may improve a lot because a lot of the employees and companies are going to start to realise, crap, it's a lot cheaper to have people working from home. I don't have to pay all the overheads that I've been in the past. And so maybe something that might have been a longer term project to shift people to more nomadic type employment, that's forced onto them to test. So interesting to see what that looks like coming
Definitely. In. I think I think that's a great opportunity, and I think it's a great opportunity if you're an employee to work amazingly at home so that you can keep this arrangement if it suits you. Like really show your employer. I'll be really honest. I've had employees who worked from home, and I used to get a bit upset when I'd call and they've gone out to the shops or something and they're meant to. So I'm saying to people, this is your great opportunity if working from home really suits you, saving on petrol, saving on all sorts of, eating out every day, those sorts of things.
Well, if you look at the average travelling to work and just getting up and getting ready and going to work, all of a sudden you've found anywhere between an hour to 2 hours, which is gold for most of us.
Yeah. I relish the fact that I've got a full tank of petrol lasting me over 2 weeks, whereas I used to be every 5 to 6 days. So COVID-19's done a lot of, I wouldn't say bad, but, there's great lessons in this, and like where can we save money, or where have we been doing things that maybe we don't have to, and how can we use this opportunity to take a little bit more control back in our lives. I think it's a good lesson there.
This question's just come up as we were talking. So the insurances within your super, let's say, if you were to actually, God forbid you don't get it, but if you were to come down with coronavirus and it takes you out, what are the steps that someone takes to actually, explore what they've got available in their super?
Yeah, so first step would be you could phone your super company or try and check your last statement. So the government changed the regulations last year that anyone with a low balance account, so it's under 6,000, that's inactive, it hasn't received a contribution, I think it's in 13 months, it would actually be closed, rolled over, and the ATO would direct that money to an active super account. That's a great thing because people aren't having their super funds reduced by fees. And then, I've got 55-year-olds who are going, I've got 70,000, but I've been working for 35 years. How is this? It's because they've had multiple jobs and those little super funds have been eaten up in fees. So it's a good thing. But what does happen as a result of that is if you had insurance in those super funds with under 6,000, that insurance is lost. So, the first thing that you can do is check your super account and see what insurance is in there. If you don't know where your super is, jump onto MyGov, and they have to report once a year if they're holding superannuation for you, and they also have to report if they're holding insurance for you in there. So it's a good place to start. With coronavirus, I'm not sure how long people are being hospitalised for, but you generally have to be off work. If you're looking at an income protection payment for a certain amount of, you always have to be off work for a certain amount of days. Generally it's 30 days, depending on the finer detail of your policy, which is what I have my head in most of the day. It might be you have to be completely off work for the first 10 days, but for the last 20 days, you can be working, but in a reduced capacity. So it comes down to that fine print. So if you get coronavirus, the best thing is to look at your policy, and sometimes I've had clients where I've actually just given them a little bit of advice around how to structure their discussion with their doctor so they can get a payment for their income protection, just because it's an insurance that you're paying for. So if we can work things to make sure you get it, then that's the best. But yeah, find your super, look for a statement from the super fund. They generally email them out to you or send them out to you. Check your insurances, and you're generally covered. A couple of insurances actually don't cover for pandemics though, so make sure you check your fine print. Yeah, none of the policies I write, because I only write guaranteed products, which means the terms and conditions can never be changed on you, because that was a passion of mine, because I actually had people who had insurable events, but because terms and conditions had changed, they actually weren't eligible for a payment, which really is tough to swallow. And I've had a client pass away who was totally and permanently disabled, but wouldn't get the payout because of the terms and conditions changing 16 times in the time that from when she took the policy to when she needed to claim on it, and then she became terminally ill, and Tess passed away in end of 2018. So these things really matter, I think, is knowing the fine print of what you've got. Because when the unexpected happens, times like this, you want to know what you've got. And if you choose not to, that's cool too. It's sort of like the citizenship thing we're talking about. If we choose not to, that's cool as well. But we just want to make informed decisions rather than being, oh no, I've been caught out. Because that's essentially why I want to do my job, just to help people make informed decisions.
Do you know what's interesting about that is that they're able to change the terms and conditions regularly. Like, who even opens up these super statements? I wouldn't have a clue. Like, it's triggered me to double check that.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, who does?
Well, the thing is, everything is about money. So why can super companies change terms and conditions on their insurance? Because if they don't, they can start paying out too many claims, and then the insurance becomes unaffordable for them to provide. So they'll tweak things. Some insurance companies now say that if you have a pre-existing condition, that most of them say you're not covered, but some of them classify pre-existing conditions as being a smoker. So it comes down to the fine print and actually taking note of when you get a letter saying, hey, our terms and conditions have changed, to say, hey, what are those changes, and am I affected? Because the onus is on us as the consumer, even though we're like down here with sort of no idea, just living life and not really caring. We don't really care until we really, really need it.
I'm going to be really vulnerable here and say, is there no grandfather clause in these things? So if you choose to change the terms and conditions up to this line in the sand, like, they can backdate that?
Not in group insurance. So it depends. There's different types of insurance. I only recommend retail. So that's where you have a one-on-one contract with the insurance provider, and the terms and conditions can never be changed. When you're in super, and those can be paid from super, which is great, but we're also mindful about retirement savings and what can we do there. On the other side of it, if you just start a new job tomorrow and they gave you an Australian super account and there was some default insurance that they gave you, they are able to change terms and conditions on that insurance at any time. Yeah. It's also generally a cheaper policy as well, because it's reflective of lower claim payout rates. And so when I'm talking to clients, it's like, we can keep this one, we can definitely do that. I just don't have control over what happens in the future. And then they tell me their priorities. So generally my clients will go with this one because their cousin went through this, or their dad went through that, and they just want to have that safety.
So guys, if you like this, or if you're watching this later on down the track, just pick up the phone and find out. I think it's powerful, that is, because I made a comment on this the last webinar that we did. Insurance is only as good as what happens when you go to make a claim, and you don't know what that is until you've got someone qualified to explain that to you, or you go to make a claim and it's too late.
Yeah. And I think, we've got quite trusting natures as well. So, with a lot of what's happened around coronavirus and the way people have felt they've been treated is, unfortunately, we don't all operate from the same values. And I know government generally doesn't operate from, they've got a job to do, and worrying about us not checking things, they don't really care. So that's why I just say, look, it's time. Coronavirus has been a great wake-up call to say, hey, am I covered for what's important to me? Have I got things in place so that I can at least see, that we're going to be okay? And if not, then what can I do so that should something like this happen again, that I've at least got a few options, and I've got a little bit of control in my life, or I've really significantly reduced my debt, or whatever it is that helps you live a leaner life and not be so affected when things like this happen.
Yeah.
Because really, with the interconnectedness of us all, the reason why this came through so quickly is because we have outsourced everything to China. We get everything in from them, and so when we do that, we take our money out of our own country, and that's why it happened so quickly. China was the start. That shut down a lot of trade in and out, and where we can bring things back to our communities. Like I'm so mindful now of spending. Like, I'm going to have to spend a bit more on things, but I will do that to keep the money here, because I think that's important. And now's a great time to just think about what's important to you within what you can do, of course.
Mm. Is there anything that you can maybe share with us that as a professional has raised some red flags for you that you think might be useful for us that we maybe haven't covered yet?
Sure. I'll speak as Celeste. Like, I'm a financial planner, but I'll speak as Celeste, the person, and say I do have concerns over the long-term sustainability of the investment market as a whole. I see a lot of banks maintaining some level of profitability, not through giving great services and products. I love what ANZ's doing, by the way, so that's different. But by doing things like closing all the branches, by taking all the jobs overseas, and I'm not about people overseas not having great levels of income as well, I am. But to me, great businesses don't just get or maintain profitability just by screwing everyone down on price. Because we feel it in the branches when we're not able to get personalised service anymore. But on the flip side, for us, we have to go, well, hey, if this is important to me, I might have to pay a little bit more for this. But if it's a priority to me, then I'm willing to do that. So I'm actually really raising this with clients and just saying, hey, when it comes to your investments, I want us to look at some long-term sustainable investments, things like healthcare, things like infrastructure, things that actually help solve issues rather than maybe create some of the issues that we've got. So there's what we call ESG options, so they're environmentally sustainable, and their governance is really good. So they actually have to abide by a set of principles of what their businesses are involved in. And I think that's a great step to us all using our money as our voice to say what's important is sustainable ventures, and not just not just mining all our resources and sending them overseas for cheap and selling off and privatising all of our utility companies. I think that we've got a lot of choice. It just takes us doing a little bit of extra research on what we buy and what we put our money into.
Look, I think this has been, like the other day they were talking about how government now and commercial services are trying to look for the locally made hand sanitizers and face masks, because everything's gone offshore and no one could get anything. So they were forced to find that little factory in the corner of some, trying to survive for many, many years, then screwed out of the business because it's gone cheaper. And now they've all of a sudden been bombarded with this business. I actually think that's probably a good thing, because all of a sudden they've realised this is where trust is so valuable.
Yeah.
We haven't done the right thing by this local business, but now we're going to bombard them with this need, and these businesses have had to scramble to get people. So I mean, and I'm a small business,
and most small businesses. For the most time I've been in small business, definitely at the start, I made a lot less than I did working for a bank. I made a lot less, but that's what you do because you feel called to do whatever. But what I'm saying is, if we can just take a pause before we purchase something, it's all the little micro actions that we can take to go to our farmers markets instead of buying at Coles. I'm sure no one likes the veggies at Coles anyway, no offence, but they're overpriced, they don't taste good. if we can, and also adapt a bit to seasonality, like actually live in tune with nature instead of trying to live in this world where we can have what we want when we want it and expect someone to always be there to provide it. It's like now we don't have people who are always there to provide what we want and need. So it's like, where can we take a step back? And this is a little bit for the younger generation, but it's our opportunity to really use our money to talk and show the government what's important.
Yeah. And we are starting to see some of the younger generation stand up and saying, hey, we need to change the way we do things now.
Yep.
You know,
yep.
So it's getting younger and younger to see these young people standing up. So that's really good to see.
Yeah. It's a community. We all have a part. So, yeah, and I'm glad that younger people are getting a bit more woke on these things and a bit more mindful. It's really cool.
Yeah. Sorry, Narelle, I didn't see your question here. So hubby wants to get his super to pay for a study course.
Oh, yep.
As he's not working and has time to retrain. I'm not sure if this is a good opportunity or not.
Hey, Narelle, my opinion is what's long-term best for your family. So my chief concern for my clients is a lot of them are blue-collar workers, forklift drivers, storemen, pickers, packers. They're being replaced by machines. Now, 70% of that workforce will be replaced by automation in the next 15 years. So if you can use this as an opportunity to get on the front foot, reskill, retrain into a more sustainable industry, please do it. Of course, look at the cost of what it's going to be and all that. But now will likely be the only time that you'll be able to do this. So to me, what you're doing there is, yes, you're selling the house at $350,000, but it's to invest into something that's more sustainable for your family. And so I would, if that was my family, that's absolutely what I'd be doing.
Yeah, great point. And Lynn, yes, I was trying to think of the Facebook page, but Australian-made products.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that Facebook page has just, I think it's only about a week old, is that right? A week or two old? And it's got thousands of members in there already.
Oh, that's great.
Australian-made goods and services.
Good. And I think I was talking the other night to a friend about it. What happens now is, I'm an empath, so I'm going, if we stop buying those products and the Chinese have no money. But, I'm also, when that happens, we all just reshift. Like my business, I had no income for 4 weeks because everything that was in progress, people just said, I can't do it. I don't know what's going to happen. And I completely understood this. That's fine. But what it forced me to do was pivot. So these other businesses, when you redirect your money locally, you're going to support your local families, and the businesses that now miss out on your money, they're going to have to actually do some work and actually look at what's important to people. They're not going to buy my stuff that lasts 6 weeks, from my $2 Kmart t-shirts. And I've bought $2 Kmart t-shirts, don't get me wrong. But you know what I mean? Like, so every businesses will die that need to die in this thing, and new businesses will come forward, and people will start to work together, and we'll have to learn our neighbours, and, we'll have to work together. And I was, just before the gyms closed down, I said to my my trainer there, I said, I've actually really enjoyed this little bit of quiet, because I got to do all this baking and make this jam, and I made this jam when I went back to New Zealand with my nan, and then and so they wanted to buy it off me. And so, all these little things are just awesome reminders of probably the way that life was before we had everything at our fingertips for super cheap, and that the way that we've been doing stuff up to this point has just been so unsustainable. I'm going to go with that. But
it's a Kiwi Which, I'm sorry, I don't know if I got a clear answer, because I don't think I asked the question clearly, but just with Kiwis and Kiwi Super, can people access that, do you know?
So unlike the government, there hasn't been an official line on what you can do. Like, the government hasn't said, like the Australian government has. The New Zealand government hasn't said you can access 10,000 they've actually referred you back to the KiwiSaver provider. It's sort of like accessing super under hardship provisions in Australia, except Australia's hardship provisions were very, very difficult to meet, as you'd know. That got really hard. So New Zealand, if you are an Australian living in, if you are a New Zealander living in Australia with KiwiSaver, there is the ability to access KiwiSaver, but it has to be taken up directly with the KiwiSaver provider, and it's best to get on the phone, and you will have to demonstrate that you're not meeting your living costs, so you'll have to have rent arrears, overdue bills and those sorts of things. I would first go to the providers to ask if they can give you some leniency. Hopefully we've all received the $200 credit on our electricity bill, those sorts of things that might help. But if you need to, go to your KiwiSaver provider and just ask them what their criteria are and then work to meet that.
Yeah. Again, it's being proactive and just starting to do that research now.
Yeah. Yes, less food allergies. I agree. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, there are lots of toilet paper. I didn't realise we had so much toilet paper made here. Making your own food, and I believe less food allergies. Absolutely. Hey, I think this has been amazing. Wow, you've packed in so much in this time. Does anyone else want to add anything to what we've talked about? No? Sounding good? So I'm going to be saving a copy of this recording in the Facebook group as well. And please, Celeste, if anyone wanted to reach out for your services, how would they do that?
Oh yeah, just hit me up online, or my company's Family First Financial Solutions. We're based in Shayla Park in Logan, and we tend to offer people, a free chat to work out if you need us. I certainly, want to make sure that we're, if I can give you what you need without charge, we do that. We want people to have the right advice. And then there's things that I have to charge for as well, and document and all that sort of legal awesome stuff. The 19 layers of compliance I go through for each client, but we're always welcoming people to come and have a chat with us, fill out maybe one of our initial questionnaires so we can get a gauge of where you are and what you need. And if we can give you what you need without needing to charge, we'll certainly do that. Otherwise, if we engage you as clients, you'll be looked after us. And we're also pivoting it as well. We'll look to take a large part of our business online, because I want these tools, certainly in my industry, I'm not speaking against the government, but with those layers of compliance, the cost to serve has become extraordinarily high. My costs have gone up 100%, and just under 100% in the last 12 months. So I'm looking at how do I bring those tools online to be able to give them to people in easier ways without having to go through a lot of red tape and unnecessary. So come and follow us.
Australia?
Say that again.
Did you look after anyone anywhere in Australia?
Yeah, I do. So I think an awesome thing about this is I love going to see people, and I used to see them a lot and sit and have the cuppa, and that was great. But I think it's taught us that we can actually meet online. Like I still feel like I'm with all of you, which has been really cool. So even if we do it via Zoom or phone, I know some people are really shy as well. So phone is cool. We can look after people anywhere.
Perfect. Wow, thank you so much. That was so valuable. I think we've covered so much. I know I'm going to sit here for a little bit and just maybe rewatch it and pick up a few more things. But Lynn, you're more than welcome for that. It has been an
Thanks, Lynn.
awesome time. Thanks, Narelle, as well, and Serena for being here, for joining us. Hopefully baby's nice and settled too. Celeste, sounds like you've got a nice quiet baby there. Fast asleep? No?
No. I don't know. Yeah. You get one child, and then so your first child's easy, which tricks you and makes you think that you make good children, and so you make another one, and then no, it's not. She keeps me on my toes. She's wild as anything.
That is so funny. All right, guys, have a good evening. Have an amazing Easter. I know it's going to be a bit of a challenge, for sure, not being able to hug people and play little Easter egg hunts, But, you know, we adapt. Like you said, Celeste, you just adapt because you have to. All of us do. There's not one that's out there on their own trying to do this. We're all working together.
Yeah, there's lots of good here. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Mwah. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Yeah. Bye-bye.